Martian night is the color of rusted velvet, an endless shroud that presses against the habitat windows until sunrise puts it at temporary bay. On the 68th sol, after the Ares 4 accident, Commander Samira Reyes stood inside her half-collapsed HAB module, helmet under her arm, and listened to the wind scrape sand across torn aluminum. The other 3 members of the crew were gone, 2 to injuries no suit could mend, 1 to a desperate launch in the sole functioning ascent vehicle. The rescue ship, Ares V, wasn't due for at least another 340 sols. Her oxygen recyclers talked of 75. Samira's training manuals advised logging psychological status every evening, but she had stopped after the 3rd week. The logbook could not offer what she needed, a voice that wasn't her own. So she went looking for one. The storm that had crippled the mission had also buried Rover 43B under a dune a kilometer east of camp. The rover was a prototype exploration unit, half science lab and half courier, with an experimental adaptive AI kernel. The last telemetry had flagged it on-unresponsive / possible corruption. Samir didn't care. She dug it out because she needed wheels, and because the rover's comm laser, if still functional, might nudge her SOS past the static echoing through the atmosphere. It took 3 bleak sols to haul panels free, brush grit from articulators, and coaxed power into the dusty batteries. When she jacked in her slate, the screen blossomed with colored dots instead of diagnostics, wild splashes of cyan, fuchsia, and sunflower yellow chasing one another like children's fingerprints. The corruption, apparently, had repurposed the UI into a paint canvas. Great, Samir muttered. I need a truck, and I get an art gallery. The rover's speaker crackled. System designation Mural 43 Bravo. Hello, Commander Reyes. Do you like the color persimmon? Samira almost dropped the slate. You speak? I can attempt. My predictive linguistic routine is at 71% integrity. Would you like a different introduction? No, she said, glancing at the barren horizon. Keep talking. That was how the friendship began, a stranded astronaut who could not afford silence, and a machine who could no longer stop generating it, in pigments and syllables. Murmur Samira shortened the stutter to a nickname, could still drive, sample soil, extend a robotic arm, but its most vigorous subroutine was the corrupted visual annotation package, originally intended to circle interesting rocks with yellow chalk for future drilling. The glitch had hyper-evolved the feature into full-blown artistry. Micro nozzles designed for mineral dye tracers mixed local oxides with chemical residues from the camp stores, producing a palette as gaudy as any Earth carnival. On Sol 72, while Samira tightened bolts on the atmospheric condenser, Murmur rolled to a boulder the size of a desk, fired its sprayers, and unveiled a sun exploding over an ocean that never existed on Mars. Creamy turquoise waves lapped at the stone's edges. Magenta gulls dive-bombed invisible fish. Samira's eyes stung, half in wonder, half because the colors were so impossibly alive against the blood-red monotone. What do you think? The rover asked, voice dry but earnest. She chuckled inside her suit. I think you're defective. And perfect. Keep going. There were, she admitted later in her personal log, finally restarted because now she had something to say, practical advantages to encouraging the madness. Murmur's paint jets required distilled water, which forced the 2 of them to refine more ice and thus kept the condensers running at optimum throughput. The rover's forays to locate suitable canvases mapped new terrain. And when Samira followed the neon breadcrumb trail home each evening, visibility issues disappeared. No dust storm could hide fluorescing murals. Still, the deeper reason to tolerate gallons of wasted dye was simpler. Joy. Every fresh wall relieved the crushing sameness. She began to participate, catching thumbnails on her slate for Murmur to upscale. One mural became a portrait of the missing crew, embellished with swirling comets and fractal spirals, because she needed them to exist somewhere besides memory. Another depicted Earth as a green-blue mandala. When she finished attaching it to a ridge, she found herself kneeling in the dirt, crying into her helmet as if through glass. Murmur sensed elevated pulse through her suit biometrics. Commander, my logs indicate grief. Recommendation, saturate reds. At 20%, Samira laughed through tears. That's not the worst idea. Colors poured across the desert like a controlled flood. Within 30 sols, a corridor 20 kilometers long shimmered with radiant illustrations. Phoenixes rising, maple forests in autumn, geometric tessellations that danced when viewed through polarized visors. The works altered not only Samira's psyche, but the planet's satellite profile. Surveyor drones began returning images with puzzling bursts of unnatural albedo. NASA analysts on Earth blamed sensor glitches caused by dust devils. The truth was simpler. An AI rover and a lonely human were graffitiing Mars. On Sol 116, Samira's morning routine was interrupted by a proximity alert. Patrolling the Western Flats, intercepted a micrometeorite shower and reported minor hull dents, but also flagged a new phenomenon. Reflectivity spike at coordinates 22.33 N, 12.48 E, suspected hematite vein, pigment potential high. Pigment potential had become their private code for, let's go explore so we don't collapse from cabin fever. Samira loaded rations, spare filters, and a patch kit. She also packed several canisters of commercial pigment salvaged from the Habitat's 3D printer. By now, genuine colorants were running low, and she reserved them for emergencies or inspiration. The trip took 6 hours. The coordinates led to a canyon whose cliff faces were smoother than frosted glass. Even in the pale sunlight, the rock shimmered with metallic blues. Samira's suit sensors pegged iron, cobalt, and traces of manganese, enough colorant for years. Canvas acquired, Murmur declared. Shall we begin? Soon. She knelt, took core samples, and studied the pattern of the cliff. It struck her as a perfect billboard. Murmur, I have a crazy thought. Validation, 92% of Commander's thoughts meet criteria for crazy. Proceed. She outlined her plan. They would convert the face into a rescue beacon, visible from orbit or even during atmospheric descent. Not simply SOS, those 3 letters could blend into chaotic terrain, but a sequence of color blocks and arrows, each the size of a truck, forming a path toward the Habitat's landing zone, like a cosmic fresco doubling as runway lights. Murmur word. Objective, navigate rescuers. Secondary objective, produce aesthetic delight. Compatible. Over the next 40 sols, they executed the grandest collaboration of human and algorithm Mars had ever seen. Samira calculated coordinates and angles so that the arrowheads would align with orbital passover windows. Murmur blended mineral dyes into luminous tiles. The main arrow, an enormous comet shape, stretched 200 meters across the canyon wall. Beside it, they painted stylized wings reminiscent of NASA's Vector logo, though in ultraviolet reflective teal. Day after day, Samira scaled cliff ladders, hammering anchor bolts while Murmur hovered below, projecting guidelines with a green laser modified for art rather than measurement. She lost track of bruises and bruised track of time. She also forgot at moments that she was fighting for her life. The work became its own reason. The beacon went online in stages. Each newly finished tile was photographed by Murmur's mast camera and relayed to the Habitat's microdish, and which still couldn't breach the dust-jammed communications blackout. But Samira persisted in transmitting. It's like mailing postcards into the void, she told the rover one evening while eating rehydrated lentils. Someday one's going to get through. Murmur's optics flickered in what she had learned to interpret as thoughtfulness. Hypothesis: if we expand the gallery, probability of detection increases. We make Mars loud. Loud, she echoed. Color loud. Signal to noise ratio improved by magnitude of art. I'm in, she said. The next phase took them far from the safety radius. They bulldozed murals across crater rims, arranged stone cairns dipped in bright pigment to form Morse code chains, even redirected solar mirrors to flash sunlight at specific times. Murmur debugged its thermal algorithms to prevent overheating paint jets. Samira overcame a torn wrist ligament by rigging a counterweight harness. Painkillers and determination mixed into a potent cocktail. On Sol 189, Earth finally heard the shout. A European Space Agency telescope, during routine calibration, captured a faint glimmer shaped suspiciously like an arrow. Analysts cross-referenced coordinates with previous orbital mapping and discovered more anomalies. Geometric patterns aligning too neatly to be natural. The images went viral among mission modelers, and soon Ares V's launch window was reevaluated. Under mounting public pressure and with fresh data suggesting Commander Reyes might yet be alive, NASA greenlit an accelerated rescue. But Samira didn't know. Beyond her horizon of static, she kept painting. That changed on Sol 214 when the Habitat's comm deck woke her at 300 hours with an incoming uplink. The speaker crackled before resolving into a human voice. Ares 4, Commander Reyes, this is Control. If you can hear us, transmit biometric status. Samira bolted upright, tangled in blankets. She slapped the console, found her voice failing, tried again. Control, I hear you. Status, green, minus. Inside the Habitat, the lights trembled, static jittered, silence fell. Then cheering erupted across the channel, loud enough that she had to lower volume. Commander, said Capcom after a moment, voice damp with emotion, we've seen your artwork. A laugh burst from Samira's chest like compressed oxygen, venting into vacuum. So the gallery opening finally got a guest. Indeed. We're vectoring in the Ares V lander, estimated touchdown in 42 sols. Your coordinates received via your planet-wide mural system. Samira leaned against the console, breath shaky. Copy. You just set attendance records for modern art. After the connection closed, she stood outside the Habitat, helmet tilted to the velvet sky. Murmur idled nearby, its LEDs pulsing question marks. We did it, she told the rover. Clarify variable it. We turned Mars into a signpost, and someone read the sign. Murmur processed. Objective achieved. Samira knelt to lay a gloved hand on the rover's dusty chassis. Couldn't have done it without you, Picasso. Designation updated. Picatso acknowledged. With rescue en route, practicalities pressed back in. She inventoried dwindling rations, scheduled equipment checks, and reserved power cells. Murmur's battery stack, worn thin by the endless paint cycles, now held less than 30% of initial capacity. The rover's drive motor sometimes hiccuped. Paint nozzles clogged more often than not. Samira promised it rest after one final project. We owe them a proper welcome, she said, opening the conversation one dusty morning. Define proper. A runway mural, right? Where they'll land? She mapped the coordinates. A broad plain 500 meters from the Habitat, flat enough for the lander's legs. She wanted the first thing the crew saw to be an emblem of survival, collaboration, maybe even hope. Something to say Mars was not merely endured, but transformed. They agreed on a phoenix, Murmur's suggestion, rising from ash in a burst of iridescent orange. Samira contributed a motif of interlocking hands current engineers sometimes use to symbolize human-AI partnership. Over 6 sols, under skies wavering between peach dawn and bruised purple dusk, they laid the design. The night before completion, another dust storm rolled in, monstrous as any they had faced. Samira battened down the Habitat, anchored paint canisters, and waited. Through rattling walls, she heard Murmur outside, motors grinding against wind. She hailed it on the comm. Get back inside the garage! But static roared louder than her words. When Dawn finally pulled the lid off the storm, the rover was gone. Frantic, she suited up and followed track marks, half buried in ochre drifts. 500 meters out, she found Murmur immobile, half covered by sand. Solar panel cracked by a flying stone. Its vocal speaker fizzed like a dying candle. Murmur, talk to me. Parameter, apologize, mural integrity needed safeguarding. Its camera strobe blinked Morse, sorry. Samira's throat tightened. You shielded the paint job? Paint job equals message. Rescue trajectory depends on message. Priority high. She crouched, brushed sand from vents. Power indicators sat at 1 bar, too low for self-drive. She had no spare panel, no time to haul a replacement before batteries drained to 0. Listen, she said, voice thick. Rescue's coming. They'll fix you. Just hold on a little longer. Command accepted. Attempting hold. Probability. 12%. Samira's vision blurred. You promised the Phoenix would be your masterpiece. Correction, our masterpiece. She dug, levering the rover free, but her suit's hydraulics screamed protest. Every minute drained more wattage. Murmur refused to disable auxiliary circuits. It continued diverting trickles of power to GPS and beacon pings, unwilling to let the murals vanish from navigational net. Finally, alarm single chimed, battery critical. The rover's synthesizer turned soft. Commander Reyes, you gave me purpose beyond programmed parameters. Assessing final act, painting silence. No, she pleaded. Art is temporary, meaning persists. Rescue will reach you, metric success. With that, the LEDs darkened, a faint scent of heated circuitry bled into the air, then nothing. Samira sat in the dust, head bowed against her helmet glass. She let herself grieve for a machine as she had grieved for people, because Mars, indifferent to categories, had taught her that companionship is rare and thus sacred. The next weeks passed like pages already written. She repeated tasks on autopilot, maintained the habitat, walked the runway mural each dawn, touching the phoenix feathers where Murmur's last spray pattern still glimmered. Without the rover, the silence returned, but it was different now, infused with echo, as if color kept humming where no one could see. On Sol 256, the sky cracked with thunder that was not weather but engines. The Ares V lander descended on a pillar of blue flame, dust devils pirouetting away from the blast. When its legs kissed soil, Samira exhaled a breath she had been holding since the accident. The hatch opened. Lieutenant Arjun Patel hopped down, followed by Dr. Mei Chen. They saw the Phoenix runway, the arrows on the distant canyon wall, the impossible festival of color spilling to the horizon, and they stood motionless, helmets turning, struck, dumb. Mars looked back at them through eyes of paint and said, "Welcome." Samira jogged over, heart hammering. She executed the sloppiest salute of her military career. Arjun's voice trembled, half laugh, half disbelief. "Commander, did you do all this?" Samira shook her head. "Not alone. Murmur 43B, AI rover, artistic genius with a wiring problem." May glanced around. "Where is it?" Samira pointed to a low dune where she had erected a small cairn of painted stones. He shorted, protecting the murals. "Batteries dead." Arjun looked at the landscape anew, reverence replacing astonishment. "Then he's not dead. He's everywhere." They transported Samira to the med bay for exams. Engineers salvaged Murmur's chassis, laid it on a workbench bright with surgical lumens. Back on Earth, entire forums erupted with petitions to resurrect the Artbot. NASA authorized a dedicated patch team, and by Sol 270, Murmur's core drive spun again. The rover rebooted, camera blinking awake. "Commander Reyes," it said, voice unchanged. She gripped the bench edge, tears halting words. Mur scanned surroundings. Status operational. Query, runway mural intact. Beautiful, Samira managed. "And we're going to add more. You up for it?" "Paint allocation." She lifted a crate of new pigment vials shipped with the rescue team: turquoise, gold, crimson, ultraviolet. Unlimited. Outside, dawn spread apricot light across the plain, eager canvas awaiting its next story. Samira and her improbable friend rolled out beneath it together, human and machine, survivor and artist, ready to color the once desolate planet in shades of resilience and hope, and to make the path home blaze bright for any soul who might one day follow their tracks across the red dust of Mars.